Halo needs a new game that adds more to the universe it has created. This is something I believe wholeheartedly. There is a huge universe out there to explore and a huge timeline, but yet there's so little in it. Now, we do have some books, we do have some comics, we do have other video games that are kind of spin offs. But even then, there's still enough gaps in Halo's universe that kind of pulls me away from the game itself and from the universe in general. So let's talk about the things it needs to add that would be really beneficial to the game itself and to the whole franchise that it has developed. So what would be the thing it would need to create? It would need to add how terrifying fighting the Covenant really was. This is something that I feel like they didn't emphasize enough in Halo Reach. Halo Reach, they illustrated how no matter how much objectives you won, in the end you would lose. That's cool, but they didn't capture how grand these fights were, how awful it was for the UNSC. They lost many Marines. In Halo Reach, you barely saw any Marines at all. And every time you did, they were just 4, maybe 5 of them. That's nothing. What we need is a game that shows us how divided the military really was. As in reality, in today's world, not all military branches work for each other. So the best game idea would be to illustrate this, showing not only that there will be many Marines dying in just droves, just 30 Marines dead from one small skirmish, but also to show that there is a divide in the branches. Not every branch in the military would be out for the same goal. This is something that would obviously be awesome. This would basically be another ODST game. So let's talk about another ODST game that would actually be good. An ODST game that could pretty much change the whole Halo setting, that would make the Halo franchise new and invigorating, make it again one of the best video game series ever. Well, the game would have to be an open world. I know they're working on Halo Infinity, but this game would offer more interesting options and choices that could change that world and influence the character's ending. Not just one standard ending, but multiple endings. Let's start with key elements and how options and choices would be presented to us in this kind of game. Well, as an ODST, you're not necessarily part of the Marines or the Army or Oni or even the Navy. So the choices we get influence one of those 3 factions. Some of these choices can come at a cost of relations with the other 2, or could just strictly be a benefit to one side. Doing so would give you perks and rewards, as I have listed in the picture created here. You can work with Oni and have access to high-tech guns. You can use agents. Literally, just call up an agent in the middle of a fight, and boom, a sniper shot just comes out of nowhere, takes out whatever target that's right in front of you, and boom, they just pretty much saved your life. Or even better, grants better information on targets. So in other words, you're not fighting just maybe 5 elites and 20 grunts. No, you're fighting 5 elites who are equipped with 2 energy swords, 3 plasma rifles, and you're fighting a bunch of grunts where 2 of them have fuel rod cannons. This information would be very helpful for your missions. You could join the Army and Marines, or at least aid them out, in which case you get access to vehicles. They can send Marine squads to help you in combat, and they can grant you better ammo and ordnance. So no longer will you be with Oni where they only give you 1 grenade and maybe 20 bullets for your assault rifle. Now the Marines will give you 4 grenades and give you a whole full set of ammo for your guns. That's nice. Or you could strictly support the Navy. Access to air support would be nice. Get a random Pelican that just flies down and just strafe bombs everybody. You can use orbital satellites. Just a random death beam just comes down out of nowhere. Maybe a Mac round just comes out of nowhere. And you could get better requisition. Requisition would be the currency. So the logistics would help you a lot. This way you can buy better gear, buy more ammo, buy whatever it is you need. These are the factions that you would be pretty much given. Now, you don't have to strictly stick to one. You could mix and mash some sides from 2, but you can never help all 3, because in the end, these guys will piss each other off. So that's something I would love to see. I would love to see it where the Marines are defending a small outpost and they're saying, hey, we need help. And if you help them, you'll get 5 relation points. But in doing so, you're going to let an Oni base fall, in which case they're going to give you -5 relation with Oni. On the other hand, you could join Oni, help defend their base, but get -5 with the Marines. This would be really nice. Now, as far as penalties, I would just say the penalties would be that you just don't get access to this stuff. But there could be negative effects if you so feel like being so hardcore. And that's something I would love to see in another Halo game. Now, as far as options go, here I have a very bad drawing of a massive city. It's just a fucking gray dot. It works. Here we have the player can be put in this point of time where he has to decide on the outcome of some cities. And have it where the player can decide, nah, I'm not doing that. You could literally just say, fuck it, I'm not going to do it. Just like Daggerfall, Elder Scrolls 2, you could just say, fuck it, I'm not going to do it. And what happens here is that you can have a city know that it's going to be attacked by the Covenant. And from here, the player will be hit with a quest where he could decide whether to rush over to set up defenses, or the player can wait till the Covenant have already arrived and begin assaulting the city, as I've drawn here, or come when the city is already starting to lose ground and choose which parts of the city to aid and which parts to leave to the Army and Marines to help. Or, as I said, just not come at all. Bottom line, the city will fall, but how it falls can change the course of the game, as a player can decide how many Marines are lost or how much damage the Covenant forces receive. This can influence later missions, and outcomes of Radiant missions, like attacking Covenant posts, will be easier since there's less, or harder because there's more Covenant forces. Or assaulting a heavy position will be easier because there's more Marines to spare, or harder because there was too many losses in defending that city. By putting this into the game, it really makes it where the player has options at their disposal. It's like, yes, in the end, the city's going to fall, because the Covenant are that powerful, so you can't perfectly protect the city. But in you deciding at what point and when you arrive in that city can totally change the outcome and can have way late game effects of saying how many Marines you have in the end, saying how many dudes are there to help you, saying all sorts of stuff. Hell, while you're defending the city, random pop-ups could happen, like the Navy can randomly signal you and said, hey, one of our robo-drones just crashed near you. Can you please just send us back the recon data? Cool. Send them up that shit, and that will just give you 1 faction relation point and no negatives. Cool. Or you're attacking a small choke point inside the city, and all of a sudden Oni says, hey, there's a medical facility nearby with one of our agents wounded in it. Can you please evacuate that hospital? Sure. Give us 2 points with Oni. No negatives. Awesome. Or you could even have more crazy stuff like the Marines will ask you, hey, we need to blow up these buildings and these buildings. This will slow the Covenant invasion, but in doing so, you're going to piss off a few people, like the Navy, because they were going to use those areas as bombing runs and stuff like that. That would be interesting. It's like, okay, so what do I do? Do I let the Navy bomb run, in which case the Covenant will take more casualties, but that's not going to slow them down? Or do I block them off, in which case the Navy loses their opening, but the Covenant are going to take longer to procure the city, which means I have more time to prepare defenses to, again, cause different outcomes. Maybe you lose more Marines, maybe you lose less. Even if you're not associated with the Marines, in the end, however many there are left alive will definitely help you in later game. But, as I said before, if you decide to side with Oni or Navy, you could potentially just become a scalpel, where you just say, fuck it, 1 bombing run and boom, I just took out a huge portion of Covenant forces. Or, boom, a headshot. 1 Oni agent just perfectly took out a general of the Covenant forces. Now they are fucking scattered and disarrayed. This would be stuff that I would love to see in a next Halo game. The next element that we would need to be set in this world would be the timeline that would be established. Personally, I like the idea of an early war. So maybe 10 years, maybe 5 years into the war. So that way we see not only how nice the planet was before, but also see how fucked the planet is after we're done with the game. This would, again, be awesome. I would love to see it before the fall of Reach. So that way this adds room for custom ODST gear, maybe custom marine armor, maybe custom weapons and custom Covenant designs. But the advantage to being set more in the past is that we get to see greater numbers. We get to see the Covenant as they truly were, where you would be fighting a fight or a battle that had easily 100 enemies each, and each fucking enemy that you fought was pretty tough. They were pretty tanky because they were well equipped. This would be a very awesome game to play, because with every fight being over 100 enemies, then, well, shit. Now you're stuck in a pickle where you have to kill as many people as possible, and you have to use your weapons and your gear effectively, which is, again, what the humans had to deal with in the novels. This is what they had to deal with all the time. But that being said about the enemies, I think personally that they should not be at a zealot status elites or brute chieftains, as realistically they are rare. Like we said in Halo Reach, zealots were only used for special missions, kind of like special ops. So really, I don't want to see that many like elite status Covenant ranked generals and stuff. I want that to be absolutely rare, like 2% or 0.2% chance you'll see an elite general. And if you kill him, the effects should be astounding. Like, even the elites are fucking running scared. That's the kind of stuff that I should see in a game like this. And again, because it's set in the past, you're going to be fighting a lot of elites. 20 elites. So, it doesn't really matter so much about the difficulty of the game, because in the end, you're fighting a shit ton of dudes who are better than you. After all, you're an ODST. You're not a Spartan, so you're not going to be able to jump super high. You're not going to have shielding. You're going to take fall damage. So the gameplay is going to force the player to use cover or to fight more creatively, like planning charges on a bridge or sacrificing squad mates so the player can retreat. This is going to be a very awesome idea, as we're going to pretty much force the player to make really groundbreaking decisions. Like, hey, there is 50 elites here with 200 grunts. Are you going to fight that head on? Maybe. If you have the right gear and equipment, you possibly could. If you have the right affiliation status and certain perks, you probably could. But there will be cost to all your decisions in the game. Again, at the beginning of the game, you're not going to really notice it. Like, oh, wow, we just lost 500 Marines in a small battle. Oh, well, hey, at least the battle was fun and cool. There was like thousands of Covenant. Cool. But then the game is going to start turning up its damage modifiers up and up and up, where all of a sudden you're fighting again another 1,000 Covenant, but you do not have 500 Marines. This, again, is going to force the player to fight a little bit more creatively. Not sneaky, but you could do that, just more creative. Now, the map I've drawn, I'll go in a brief description of things and locations this game could hold. Here I have drawn an HQ. This will have your vehicles and supplies, places that you can buy more weapons and armor. That's always good. Here we have an outpost which might have a vehicle or some supplies, but there will be no guarantee as to which it will have. Here we have a city or a massive Covenant camp. Either way, it's a massive target that would need to be the center focus of the nearby objectives. So it would be kind of like a province, where the world is much bigger than this, but every section of the world has its own massive target, whether it's a city, whether it's an outpost, whatever it is. And that's pretty much where all the nearby objectives would kind of focus on and just target that. Here we have a rebel outpost. As the early days, there still was rebels, and clearing this out can give the player rewards and a new outpost or HQ. Now, the rebels can be rebels of humanity or rebels of the Covenant. So all of a sudden you just see a random bunch of jackals, and it's like, oh wow, these are just a bunch of rebel mercenaries. Alright, let's just clear them out and boom. Boom, bang, boom. Done. We get a new spot. And we get more supplies and requisition. Awesome. Here's a Oni Research Facility that will be where Oni players can go. By doing this, you can, of course, buy your high-tech weapons, do all your high-tech Oni research stuff, do your agent stuff, get your Oni missions directly and help Oni characters who are in charge, like special agents and stuff. Here's the entry point of the Covenant. Basically, the player will never be able to secure this, but can own the map and wait until the moment the Covenant gets so fucking strong that the player's defenses won't hold anymore, and they proceed to take the map. This is something that I like a lot, where essentially you could take over all the provinces of the world, but there will be one spot that just constantly ramps up difficulty. So you just keep beating the Covenant back. But you'll never take over this one spot of the map, because this is where the Covenant's coming from. And this could be just a massive carrier that's landed down, or it could be whatever it is you decide. But bottom line is, it will eventually get to the point where there are just hundreds of thousands of grunts, elites, jackals, everything, and they will topple your defenses, as after all, you're getting Marine reinforcements, but not nearly in the same quantity that they are getting their reinforcements. So over time, no matter how good your shit is, no matter how high leveled your player is, you will get overrun. And once you get overrun, they will proceed to take the map. So all of a sudden, you're going to have to fight in the nearby province. You're going to have to fight all of a sudden in 3 provinces, and you're going to slowly get pushed back. Here's a target that can be destroyed. It'll be either a Covenant Spire or a fueling station or whatever it is that will hinder nearby enemy forces. So the player doesn't have to deal with 6 wraiths or have to deal with cloaked enemies. Or even the player doesn't have to deal with beam rifles because you took out their weapon caches. Something of that nature. This way, again, your player choices and quests are influencing the game and the map and the very world that you're in. Also, the game should have a preceding effect if the player loses everything to the Covenant, which the player eventually will. Like, as I have drawn here, the climate will turn to ash or ice from the destruction of the planet. The game will do this towards the later stages of the game, where the player character has done pretty much most of the main quest. The main quest, now that we're going to talk about that, the main quest I will put with no time limit, but as I said, earlier Covenant forces get stronger as human forces start dwindling, so you can potentially fail the main quest. The enemies will scale slowly, so for, let's say, 40 hours into the game, you won't notice much. But all of a sudden, 80 hours into the game, and you're going to start noticing that the 10 grunts per squad that you're fighting is now 20. And then it's going to start bumping up and bumping up. So this slow progression will give you a lot of time to do whatever the fuck you want in the world. But just know, in the end of the game, by the time you reach 100 hours in one playthrough, yeah, you're going to be dealing with maybe 50 wraiths every battle, deal with maybe 300 elites every battle, deal with maybe 1,000 grunts every battle, and then you're only going to have maybe 2 or 3 ODST squads to help you out, and maybe 16 Marine squads. Yeah, you're going to be looking like you're losing every fight, and it's going to be fast, because you're just so heavily outnumbered. This way, the player can do everything in a reasonable time without fucking themselves out of the story. But it does put in that realistic perspective that the world's not on pause. Just because you're out doing something doesn't mean that everything in the world stops. This adds, again, that realistic effect where when the Covenant attack a planet, the planet is so fucked in so much disarray that really there's not a lot of time. And when you think about it, 100 hours, and all of a sudden a planet went from fully populated and prospering to just ash and dust, that is not a lot of days. Shit, 72 hours is 3 days. 100? Yeah, that's like 4 or 5 days. So that's something that I like, is the idea of a game that progresses in real-time progression. And, of course, you can save and quit. The game's going to pause there for you. But when you're actually playing, there is no pausing. Like, your character is in it, and you better start moving. That's something that I would love to see. Now, the main quest itself, the main quest I will put in with no time, as I said earlier, Covenant forces will get stronger as human forces start dwindling, so you can fail a main quest. That's really awesome. But, more interestingly, the main quest is going to be about basically your character, the ODST, is dropped on a desperate planet and is told to assemble forces and follow nearby officials for orders. This leaves us with a lot of choices as who are these officials we're supposed to follow? Really, your ship captain who dropped you there, he's just told to drop you on the planet and do whatever it is you can. Because as an ODST, you're given a little bit more freedoms and equipment than a normal soldier is. So, you get to choose. Do you really want to help some Marines? Do you want to help some Navy? Do you want to help Oni? Whatever it is you want. But there's also going to be an RPG element where the player can take levels and perks for his ODST that will develop how he plays and faces the challenges on this planet. Speaking of perks, let's talk about perks. I wrote up a little list here. It's kind of like Borderlands-ish, but essentially there's going to be 3 main categories you could go down. Some of these categories could work well with certain factions. Other categories might not. Like, we'll go down Bravery. Bravery, you could do more damage with close-ranged weapons. This could be SMGs, assault rifles. That would be awesome. This would also give you more stamina. More stamina. So what is stamina? Stamina is that little gap before you start actually taking damage in the video game Halo 3 ODST. So in other words, your ODST is trained to use his stamina and his endurance to kind of take and run off most shots. By having more stamina, you're able to take more damage before you actually start losing HP. Extra healing for medkits. This would be nice to make it where medkits don't instantly heal you, but instead they heal you chip by chip at a time. So in other words, your HP bar will be divided into segments, and of course, the medkit can restore 1 slot, but if you have Bravery, it can restore 2 slots. That would be awesome. Also, holding more ammo. Holding more ammo is always nice, especially when you're close ranged. The uber power, though, your special ability, would be Rampage. Shots and melee attacks do twice more damage. Now, melee attacks are going to be very weak, but your player, if you activate Rampage, your melee attacks will hit almost as hard as a Spartan. I say almost, so in other words, the Spartan could destroy elite shields and then punch him, and boom, he's dead. If you have Bravery and you activate Rampage, you could shoot out an enemy's shield, and then you have to punch him twice to kill him. Or just punch him once and just shoot him in the kneecaps. Boom, dead. The next one would be Courage. Courage is more of a team thing. So allies' damage increases, allies have more HP, hold additional medkits so that way you can heal your allies, can exchange weapons with allies. So in other words, you can do that stupid glitch where you can just have a rocket launcher that's got 1 shot left and just give it to a Marine, and all of a sudden, that Marine's going to have infinite rocket shots. Then your uber power would be Charge. Nearby friendlies gain double HP and fire more frequently. So in other words, now your enemies are going to be scared more of your teammates than they are going to be of you. This essentially is just a class built around working together in unison with whatever it is you have at your disposal. If you have a few Oni agents, buff them up. You have a few ODSTs, buff them up. You have a few Marines, buff them up as much as you possibly can. The last one will be Shock. Because remember, ODSTs are all about shock value. So in this one, you deal more damage with long-ranged and high-tech weapons. The reason why I lopped those two together is because pretty much all high-tech weapons are long-range weapons. This would be Spartan lasers, rocket launchers, and sniper rifles. But more importantly, you can use Covenant weapons. The reason why I put that as a perk instead of as a standard for the game along with exchanging weapons is that, again, you have to think about it realistically. In the Covenant War, the Marines and the ODSTs and the Spartans didn't really know what the fuck to use when it came to those plasma pistols and the energy swords. It's so alien of a concept how they work that originally people didn't know how the fuck to use them. Shock value, Shock, the skill tree, you're going to learn how to use those weapons. So in other words, now you can actually pick up an elite sword and squeeze it with both hands and boom, it activates. And you can use that both hands to slash at elites. Of course, it's going to look weird because we're used to the traditional one-handed Spartan, But realistically, it takes a lot of strength to turn that damn thing on. So a real human would have to hold it with both hands, your ODST, activates it, and then you can just come in and just swipe it like a claymore, and just whatever it is you hit is going to get cut in half. You can also have a mini-map. Again, shock is more for high-tech, so you're going to have a little tiny mini-map that's not as much. So in other words, in Halo, it's like 25 meters. Your map is going to be 10 meters or 15 meters. Also, you're harder to detect. Again, you're supposed to shock the enemy, not fucking just charge in willy-nilly. And your uber power would be Nightfall. All shots don't cause sound, and enemies won't be alerted if one catches you. I know the words kind of got clipped off there. It's okay. So in other words, every time you shoot someone, there's not going to be a sound that will alert the nearby guys. And if you don't kill him in a first shot, he's going to be alerted to your presence, but all of his allies are not. This might be a little OP, but I think it's a really fitting description for the whole idea of stealth, using high-tech weapons, just shock value in general. This can help the player's main objective, which is, of course, to find a wounded Spartan. Why a wounded Spartan? Because the idea that Spartans never die is, of course, integral into the UNSC's morale. And the whole point of this game is to show that this war is going to be bloody. There's going to be death everywhere. That humanity is essentially fighting a losing battle. And this is where our ODST's character is supposed to come in, is that he can actually talk, and he has his own personality, which is that he's a little bit pessimistic. Originally, when he's dropped, he talks about how it was such a waste of his time to keep killing those insurrectionists, because no matter how many he killed, that just added more fire to the flame. They were just going to keep taking up arms against the UNSC. Well, now he's fighting the Covenant, and now he's a little bit grim and dour, and he's like, I'm losing people left and right, and I'm not seeing an astounding effect. Like, we've destroyed all the Covenant forces in this area, and yet they still come back in greater number. And this is where the main quest is going to be, is that no one knows where this wounded Spartan is on the planet, because the wounded Spartan did a mission where he tried to get navigational data from the Covenant fleet, but he landed on the planet with the data, and now no one knows where the fuck he is. So as you're scouring through the planet, you realize that the only way people are going to find out where the hell a Spartan is if you make them focus on that. Problem is that not only does no one know where he is, but there is a big invasion going on. So you're going to have to somehow do favors while at the same time pulling those officials, whether they're special agents from Oni, whether they're high command up in the Navy, or whether they're just local Marines who you can just tug and pull and say, hey, General, I need to find this Spartan ASAP. Like, do you know anything about a crash site nearby? Or you could go to an Oni and go, is there any classified data you have on maybe Covenant forces snooping around a cave too much? Or you can go to high command, the Navy, and just say, hey, do you guys scan anything up there? Something odd, something peculiar on the planet? This would eventually lead to the end of the main quest, where after all this trials and tribulations, finally you find what you're looking for, and it turns out the Spartan is dead, but not only is he dead, he doesn't have the data. He failed his mission. This will demoralize your character and whatever troops you have left over, as now your character will fully assume his pessimistic view and just say, this war will bring nothing but death. And of course, by this point in time, the world is starting to lose, and it's starting to be just glassed. And as I've shown before, the map will start to turn hostile, as the ash and the ice will just start taking over the planet. This is where the player is given a bunch of endings, and it will be decided by the player's decisions and stuff, whether or not he evacuates the planet, whether he evacuates his squad but decides to stay behind, whether he decides to neglect the evac order entirely and say it's pointless to delay the inevitable, as he knows that if he lives, he's just going to see more people die, so he'd rather just die fucking now. This would be a very awesome main story, as again, the whole point is to capture how fucking terrifying it would be to be a normal soldier during the Covenant War. It would be just absolutely awful. There's no way in hell you could do anything right. And there's also no way in hell that you could ever do something correctly against the Covenant that would actually turn out into a dramatic effect. Like destroying the Halo ring, which destroyed 80% of the Covenant's fleets, that was a fucking rarity. And of course, Master Chief did that. No ODST is going to be able to do this. No normal human is going to be able to do this. Even with a together, coherent fighting force, a really strong army, you're not going to be able to take on this many dudes. And this is exactly how many Covenant there was. So this is something I would love to explore. This is a video game that we need in Halo. This is a game that will not only revitalize the interest into Halo lore, but this will also revitalize the whole idea of Halo. The whole idea of Halo is that here's humanity, and it is getting fought on from all sides by an alien Covenant that is super high-tech, super powerful. Each individual species is better than the fucking humans. It's a fight for survival against a very hostile galaxy. I would love to see this. This would definitely expand our knowledge about the world. This would also add a lot of customization options, like how your ODST dresses could give him more ammo. Maybe it could give him a harder time to detect. This would be just really fucking awesome.